Hey guys, Jason here, architect working in Toronto. This is a long video. This is like 2 hours long. But what it is I got a small design project. It was a conference room, some washrooms. The washrooms will be another video. And I thought to take you along this ride of, we've measured the site, so taking the existing as-built drawings and turning that into a 3D model that the client can understand to see a proposed design. So that's what this 2 hour video is. It's basically almost it's almost a full screen capture from start to finish. There are parts that I've sped up, and there's portions where I get sidetracked from emails and things like that. But yeah, please enjoy. It's a long one, so sit back, relax, and watch the process. Hey everyone, yeah, so this is an existing drawing. So you're gonna see the measurements flash on the screen later on as I double check a few things. But I've gone ahead and pre-drafted this this existing floor plan. It's basically a conference room and two bathrooms, a male and a female bathroom. And for this video, we'll be focusing on just the boardroom. Now, I haven't used CAD in a while, so what you're looking at here is base CAD just installed, freshly installed. I hate the ribbon. That was that thing at the top, so I've removed it. And then there's only a few toolbars that I really care about. And they refer to, layers, yeah, as you see here, knowing what layer you're on. A few things like a draw order, views. So this is kind of old school. This is back in the day when I used to do some 3D CAD stuff, because I'm a little older. So visual styles. Yeah, there's a bunch of toolbars that I used to use, and I'm going through because I am a little bit rusty and setting up my CAD. I keep AutoCAD pretty much its raw form. I don't do that much tweaking to the software just because we reinstall the software basically almost every year. So every time AutoCAD makes a change, if you have to re-input a bunch of new settings, it just becomes a pain. And after using it for so many years, I've gotten used to just base CAD, all the commands and things like that. I'm testing out UCS, that's a Universal Coordinate System. These are things I was just like, oh, maybe I need this, maybe I need that. And just setting up the precursor to drafting on this project. Running my practice now, I don't draft that much. So setting up CAD, I'm doing it now at the beginning of this video. But all you out there, if you are using AutoCAD, I do highly recommend learning the hotkeys, learning the commands, using the keyboard, because it is way faster than using the ribbon that AutoCAD has included. The ribbon is, it's nice because it's graphic. You see the different tools that you can use. But if you can use, that is a function of using your mouse, moving your mouse to click to something to create a line and clicking back into the drafting. If you can click with your left hand, just the L key for line, all of a sudden your speed is like 1/10 the time to input that command. I'm going to start up, and this is existing. This was pre-drafted beforehand based on site measurements we made about 2 weeks ago. I'm checking the integrity of the drawing. These are things called blocks. I've turned off this layer, zooming through, and now it's optimizing. So the task right now is I will be taking this 2D drawing and putting it into SketchUp. It's a software I like to use. A lot of my staff members, they like using Autodesk's Revit, which is your modeling and drafting basically in real time. You're modeling the space, and then you're slicing out drawings from there. But what I'm doing here is I'm optimizing for SketchUp. I like the visualization of SketchUp. And for this particular task, this particular project, all the client needs are visuals, less architectural drawings. They want to see what this space looks like. A little bit of a misclick there. Let's bring it back up. So what I've done here is those are glass panes. I've made one block and copied them over so that in SketchUp, the blocks become components automatically. And when I edit that one component, it will edit all 5 panes all at once. So you're splitting that work up. You're dividing that work up in 5. Doing it once, you basically multiply the amount of work you're doing, and it's just that much faster. On site, talking with the clients, what I'm doing here is they had envisioned using vinyl wrap or wallpaper or some kind of graphic in their boardroom. And the theme of this project, I mean, the theme of this, the brand of this company is it's a lot of colors of white, red, and a little bit of gray tones. So you'll see that later on in the video. And that reflects in the graphic that they have. They have a few graphics. I'm actually going to choose the one that we're not going to use just for their privacy sake. Yeah, so I mean, we were thinking, okay, maybe there's this arch in the wall that kind of curls the graphic from one side to the other, and then I'm trying it out on this other side too. Maybe we also curve the wall. Using a little bit of tangents, like how do you intersect a circle on two spaces, two lines that are not perpendicular. So it's a little bit tricky here. So you'll see I'm going to bring this circle across right there, and then move it upwards to hit that tangent. And you kind of have to draw a line in advance because AutoCAD will see that intersection. So once I drew that line, it recognizes that intersection, and now I can delete it, and there's a tangent of 2 points that are non-perpendicular. A lot of geometry. So if you're starting out in AutoCAD, it is in your favor to understand geometry quite well. In some rare cases, we would be using trigonometry to figure some things out, or we draw it. We draw it and measure, and understanding that stuff is just to your benefit. I delete that second curve. I think it doesn't do anything to the design. And yeah, what am I doing here? Right, I'm centering the table onto this wall. That wall that I'm drawing on right now will become a TV wall. Currently, there's a projector, and moving on with the times, projectors are kind of less popular. Here I'm trying to hit a midpoint. So each line has a bunch of kind of snaps, and the midpoint there, that's a little triangle symbol that you just saw flash in front of you. I've learned this from a previous office about CAD standards. Don't have all your snaps turned on. Like, the one thing that students do is they just have every snap known to man, the nearest, everything. And that's just bad. To me, overall, that's bad technique. If you're snapping to everything and you're not intentional on what you're snapping to, you can accidentally snap something that is non-perpendicular or non-parallel, and all of a sudden every line you snap to that is going to be off, is not going to be perpendicular. And so it's really important to have good technique. And so what I'm doing here is I'm figuring out what an 84-inch TV screen will look like. And so using a 16:9 ratio, you make a diagonal line that's 84 inches, and then you scale up that 16:9 across right there to the 84 hit, and that's roughly what an 84-inch TV size will be in height and length, 6'1" and 3/16 right there. So I just need to know that, because it's like, how am I visualizing this in my head? In this space, like how big is this TV going to be? And so I'm just doing this stuff to kind of make sure I'm visualizing this correctly, because if the TV doesn't look right on the wall, then we got to fix something. So yeah, that's the 6'1" there that we put in, and so it's like, yeah, that makes sense in terms of a TV size. Let's continue on. So what am I doing here? So Right. So now I'm labeling, and so I haven't written anything in this document yet. Text size is a really tricky thing, and my shorthand of doing that is using a dimension. So I know 1/4 inch is about right. I make a leader, and leaders automatically have a text function, and it will tell me it should be 4.5 inches. The text size for this scale should be 4.5 inches tall. That might be gibberish to you. AutoCAD is a straight drafting tool, and we are always drafting at 1:1. Like I am drafting exactly 1 inch is 1 inch. However, when we print stuff, we scale things down. And my expectation is this drawing would be in the 1/4 inch scale. That's 1/4 of an inch equals to 1 foot. That's imperial scales. But then how big should text be to look right? Overall text when printed should be 3/32 of an inch. It's close to 1/8 of an inch. If you take kind of any document and you measure how like any kind of book and you measure how tall in 1:1 how tall text is, it's around that, and architectural drawings are around 1/8 of an inch. We like 3/32, which is like kind of nitpicky. But like, how does that translate? And it's like, rather than doing all the math to backward calculate how tall something needs to be drawn at 1:1 to look like 3/32 of an inch printed at a 1/4 inch scale, the shorthand is to use our dimensions. It'll pre-do the math, and then it just spat out 4.5 inches based on that pointer tool, the leader. Anyway, if that was all gibberish, don't worry about it. But that is my shorthand to get text scale to be right when it prints. And that took a little while to figure out when I was starting out. So if it's gibberish to you, like, feel free to make a comment. I'll try to answer as best I can and go from there. But now I have text that is at a readable dimension because originally text was going to be drawn at one inch or something, whatever it is the default was, and which is like minuscule when printing to scale. I'm just making some notes here. There's an idea here to frost 2 of the panes of glass, just because there's a corridor here and an office on the opposite side of the corridor with a door. And it's like, maybe we should frost these 2 panes just so that there's some screening for whoever's in that office. In the end, we are thinking of electric chromic glass. That's smart glass that can change from opaque to translucent using basically electricity. And that's an idea. You'll see it later on. I think I do it in this video. Right now I'm optimizing the drawing, so it's like we don't need all this extra wall in the model. And when you do interior models, there's no reason to have the entire floor plate in there. You just want to focus on a room or a space. So what I'm doing is I'm breaking out the bathrooms. It's a separate interior design exercise, and making this purely about the conference room, just so that the model is efficient. The 3D model we're working on isn't chunky, and you will find that doing this ahead of time will save you so much in terms of computer resources and time and saving drawings and all that stuff. So talking with the clients, I at our meeting, I asked them, what is this space used for? And they say, at least every week we have a big stakeholders meeting. And we usually serve lunch, and it'd be nice to have a banquet or some kind of a buffet for the caterer to lay out lunch for the stakeholders to eat to get their food. And so that's what I'm doing here. Is at the entrance door, I'm thinking maybe a banquet of some kind should be placed right when you enter. Now, the tricky thing here is what I've drawn here. It's like, it doesn't look right. It looks a little bit off. Something about it is like just it should be centered, or it just feels awkward in the space being tucked up against the existing sidewall. And so I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about how do I how do I marry that with the existing kitchenette? That's this counter, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe we come out a little bit. Maybe there's a little bit of this kind of countertop that matches together. I don't know. So I'm testing ideas out in CAD, in AutoCAD, and I'm not sure if this is the right decision. I'm trying it out. We'll see how it kind of rectifies. And so yeah, I'm thinking. I'm staring at it and I'm thinking. Actually, you know what? I think I'm sidetracked here. So yeah. That was a sidetrack. So back to it. I was reading an email there and I just cut the video. So back to it. So this is like maybe there's a way that this countertop can link together with the side banquette. I'm not sure, but it's a neat idea that I was trying out here. So here I am. So this is where you're trying to join multiple polylines. So in AutoCAD, there's lines, there's polylines. They're kind of different things. So lines are just individual segments. A polyline is a closed, as poly suggests, it's a closed multiple set of segments of lines. What that creates is kind of this element that is closed, and it's good for hatching. It's good for all these things. I like it for countertop because then I can kind of stretch things and visualize this kind of shape. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe here we do an arch, a countertop that's arched to kind of go with the theme of this kind of curved wall thing. And I struggle a bit. So arches function differently than polylines, and they don't exactly marry well with polylines in AutoCAD. So I'm struggling here to kind of do trims and stuff, but ultimately this is not the idea that I go with in the end. I'm just trying something out as an idea. And yeah, I was thinking maybe if this curve thing happens, then yeah, maybe it can tuck closer to the wall, have this kind of curved countertop that curls in the corner. But it just felt weird. It felt like I'm visualizing, the corner of the wall being a perfectly tight 90 degrees, and then this kind of curved countertop, proud of it, like, it doesn't seem right. So it's like, is there a way that we curve the wall, too, behind, to match the curved countertop? And so you'll see me, I'm trying out this idea, seeing if it'll work. I mean, it's always worth it. So I had a professor back in school back in the day, and we would talk about these ideas and all these things, and then he would just say, you know what, just draw it. Just draw it. Like what are we talking about? We're going to be talking about it all day. You need to draw the idea, because up until that point, nothing's valid. You're just talking about ideas in the air, just floating around like dust. So I'm staring at it like, does this make sense? I've drawn this kind of curve thing. I'm now thinking about the other side of the wall that I've moved over. It's like, is there something we can do here? And ultimately, it doesn't make any sense. We're going to lose all this space for no reason, and it doesn't look right. That's what I'm thinking. But I'm tracking through the idea, racing out the wall, seeing what this thing can look like, and it kind of looks goofy. Like, something about it just doesn't seem right, because this banquette kind of reduces down to almost zero of a countertop, and then it expands into this kind of kitchenette. Here I'm trying to create a new polyline. There's a P-edit, that's the tool here, and you can select a bunch of polylines and it will join them all together. Again, so the speed at which things are going, I mean, we're joining all this stuff. If you use the ribbon to do all this, it would take easily 5 or 6 times as long as this to join polylines and things like that. Here we go. So I'm staring at it. I'm visualizing. My eyes are closed. I'm visualizing what this thing looks like, and it doesn't feel right. Something about it. It's like I'm not happy. I'm taking a look at some photos on another monitor of what this thing can be, but but yeah, exactly. So I bring it back up here. Let's see. Yeah, and I'm going through the various here you get a little snippet of existing the as-built dimensions that were on site. We're done on site. This is the washroom space. This is the 2 washrooms. I'm just going through the photos, thinking about what we can do here, and I am flipping through really quickly to think about it. And there's that corner. So that corner where that man is down there, that's what we're talking about. What do we do in that area? Does it make sense? And so, and then I do a little. So sometimes when you're designing something, it is way quicker. Oop, there's old drawings back there. It's way quicker to try to sketch something. We can draft this all day in AutoCAD, but sometimes just by hand thinking about what this thing could be is such a quick way to visualize something without needing to do renderings, without needing to do full out drawings. And so I'm trying to visualize this banquet that stops short from the door, because you want the door to be able to open to a pretty wide swing. But it doesn't, there's something unresolved that I'm not loving. So here is that curved wall. I'm coming across with the banquette. Trying to gray out. So they have this, it looks like a dartboard, but it opens up and it becomes this kind of whiteboard that's like such they're like, we never use this thing. It's just a thing in the space that has been here for the last 20 years kind of thing. So I'm just trying out different colors. Yeah, okay, so just trying to draw, what is this kind of curved wall thing looking like? And then how does the countertop extend across? And then this banquette, what does that look like down there? And something about it, it just doesn't, it's not right. And I'm hating it. As I'm doing, like maybe we do an archway in front of the existing kitchenette. Maybe we do, and then it strikes me as like, right. The clients wanted full upper cabinets that go all the way to the ceiling. So that reminded me of a note. And then maybe we do an archway in this kitchenette, but it's too, it doesn't feel right. And something about that is it doesn't sit well from a quick sketch like this. So without even modeling it, without needing to like go full out 3D modeling it, you get a sense. And I'm deleting the archway because it doesn't seem right. There's a lot of intuition that gets baked into these design decisions, and then I'm thinking, okay, that right, this comes across down. It's like it just feels more normal to have that 90-degree corner. Like, why curve that? You lose all this space. What's the point? And then thinking about, how does the door swing? How does the entrance door sweep, across the other side? We can't put the banquette all the way to the door because then the door can't open. So what do we do? What's the solution? And just staring at it, logo wall. It's like, oh, that's an idea. We can put a nice logo wall right center on that. And then it kind of informs, you know what? There needs to be something centered on this wall or going right across this wall or something. Drawing out some datums. And maybe there's this kind of banquet that goes right across and we figure something out that seems to look right. Yeah, little notes for myself. Keep it simple. Right. So the TV that we drew earlier, that's the major view. The logo is technically a minor view. There's a major minor to this kind of space. The logo is on the smaller wall. It's not what people are staring at. Yeah, the main view is looking at the TV wall, this kind of wrapped graphic that goes around the 2 walls that we've curved. That's the main thing that we're considering. Without this design, that's how this design kind of works. If you try to make every wall major, the major note, it just doesn't work right. So here I am now going back. How do we we go back to drafting this thing out as per the sketch. Bringing this countertop back in. Let's straighten out that edge again. Keep it simple. Where's the logo going to go? It's gonna locate centered on that wall back there. Opening that back up. Always, like, the sketches you have inform the drafting, so it's always important to have those sketches in the back of your head. And now I'm bringing this to the center, so midpoint snap to the midpoint of that wall there, and floating that out, so it's like a logo of some kind in this location. So now, the banquette. We want a banquette that makes sense in this space, and clearly it needs to be centered now. You've got this logo, but we can't go wall to wall because now you can't open the door. So I draw this rectangle that's like, this is some kind of banquette, some kind of shelf at a very shallow depth. I think it's only like a foot or something like that. And I'm like, okay, you know what? We can center on the wall. Let's tuck it in. Ooh, and maybe it needs to be a little more. Tuck it in a little more, another 6 inches kind of thing. I think I punched it 6 inches. I'm considering. There we go. 6 inches. And then maybe this thing needs to come out more. But then how does that door work? We're going to smash that corner of the door. So I bring it back. But then there's another thing. It's like maybe we can chamfer the edges or curve the edges or do something like that. So that's the next thing in my head. And all of a sudden then the door can open pretty wide. It doesn't get smashed on a corner. And that's a great resolution for that wall. The existing boardroom desk. So now an idea that got floated was maybe we cap this desk with a new tabletop. Conference room desks are very expensive things because they're large furniture items. They are oversized. Let's say that word, oversized furniture items. And so they could represent tens of thousands of dollars for one giant desk. It could be even more. Like some desks are hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's insanity. So the idea here was maybe we put a stone cap on top of the existing desk. And maybe that stone cap is a marble or maybe it's a quartz, some kind of a hardy material. And here I'm struggling here so polylines and arches, again, they don't play very well. And so I'm struggling to kind of get this corner half crescent in there. And so, yeah, this is me shaking off the rust. I haven't done it in a while. So, in the end, I think I manually just make an arch and a line and make them a polyline together rather than trying to draw that. And so, yeah, I was thinking maybe we cap this with 4 parts. There's 2 crescent moon shaped ends, tabletop ends, and then 2 center caps, rectangular caps that just literally sit on top of the existing boardroom desk. That's a very cheap solution. It could be glued down, and certainly coming in 4 pieces is easier to transport. And it will have a good look depending on how we match the materiality of the rest of the space. That all has to make sense. The obvious answer is to make the tabletop the same as the countertop. Here I'm trying to delete this grip and I'm not succeeding at all. Quite frustrating. Sometimes this happens when a grip isn't fully closed. That's not the case. I'm testing out if grips are closed. Nope. So I'm getting frustrated. You can see me nodding my head. It's like, and that happens. It's part of the drafting thing. Here I go. I just make an arch, keep it dead simple. I think I draw a line and then just put the 2 together. And I got a question. So back to business here. I'll skip forwards because I think a staff member in the back She has some questions. And we're back. So, yeah, I'm drawing this thing out. I think I have finally succeed. Get the 2 points together. P edit, polyline edit. Make things one thing. And then once I've gotten that together, I make it a block. A block, it's a reference to a thing that can be copied. And when you alter that one block, it alters all blocks that are the same. So this is really about efficiency. When you prep a model, when you prep drafting for a 3D model, the more repetition you can use to your advantage, the quicker you can get something done. And so I'm making the center part one block. It's a tabletop, I think, tabletop 2. And then I'm copying that over. Actually, I'm mirroring it. And you can see there's a little tiny gap. If you zoom in, I think I make it an 1/8 of an inch gap, just because the 3D model, when things are tight, like literally touching each other, it doesn't read when you render. You can't see those lines. And in the real world, the physical real world, when two things are not one thing, there is a little bit of a shadow line, a little bit of a detail line that exists. So it's important to, when you prep for a 3D model, to have things kind of float away. There's to be like off by an 1/8 of an inch, or a 1/16 of an inch, or a 32nd of an inch. In other cases, it could be a 1/4 of an inch. It all depends on the project or on the thing. And here I am. So this is the door casing with the actual door, and I'm now editing it so that it all floats away from each other. And that's also just a modeling technique, because in SketchUp as a piece of software is kind of sticky. I don't know how to explain it any better than that. It's sticky. When two things touch each other, they become one thing. And so also the benefit of floating things off like this is it just makes it that much easier to select, to edit, because it's not sticking to something else that it's touching. These can be distinct or discrete items. Here I am. I'm mirroring this one door across, so that when I make edits to this one door, I make edits to both doors. Making sure the snaps are all nice and clean. So I mean, this is getting pretty close. This is getting pretty close where I can bring it into SketchUp and it will be a pretty good thing. I'm thinking about, okay, what about other things? Like if there's glass here, I can see the other side of the corridor. So I need a wall here. I should draft some kind of wall for the opposite side of the corridor. And so if you pre-do that stuff, it just makes it that much easier later on, rather than having to model that in SketchUp. Knowing that there is some kind of corridor and prepping it just makes it clean for later on. Here I make it long enough because I imagine, the view, if you look across from the glass, if the wall's not long enough, then you'll see vast nothingness in the distance. And then there's this door here, so it's important to have that door in the model, just because we know that there is this entry to an office on the opposite side, so that has to be taken account for. When we're designing stuff, we are always picturing, what do you see? What would you be looking at? And very much, there's an office door right here. I'm taking a look at the photos to figure out which way does this door open, and there it is. So it opens in that direction. So I go whoop, little flip. There we go. I don't know if you caught that, but that's the way the door goes. Let's see here. And just cleaning up the model because the wall itself ends at the door. So I'm just drafting that out, making sure that it's discrete items, because when we're modeling it, it just makes it that much quicker to be able to select things separately from other things. It's good. And then there's a glass wall there, so that office also has this interior glass partition. Now, I didn't measure that. This is beyond the kind of overall scope of this design investigation, but notionally we know that this glass exists. It's roughly this size. It's not perfect, but it'll do the job in terms of the model. It'll do the job in terms of conveying what you see. I'm not sure what I'm doing here. I think I'm floating it away. Yeah, I'm floating away from the wall. There we go. Which, of course, it'll do it to all the panes of glass. So, I didn't do this in advance. Now I did it to all and now all the glass are discrete little bits. And that's what I want to see. I think there's only 3 panes. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Ending the wall. Little trim action. Offset at 1/16 of an inch. Oh, instead of trimming, I just make it a totally new polyline. Bring this one back. Easy peasy. Go. And match layer. Perfect. So now when I make one of those glass panes, I do basically 8 of them all at once. I thought about cleaning up this door, but I don't like mucking around with this particular type, so I just explode it. I'll make its own type of door on its own. And that's for the purposes of SketchUp, of just making it easier when I model to having this thing be its own block that doesn't have all these extra lines and is a discrete thing. So I'm just doing some pre-prepping. So that's another big. So that the whole thing of this is you want to pre-prep your AutoCAD drawing as much as you can before you go into modeling. The more you can clean up now, the easier it will be when you get into SketchUp or any whatever modeling software. The cleaner this file is, the better it is later on. It'll pay itself back in spades in terms of time and effort. Okay, so here I am, just doing now cleaning up the extraneous things in the model, and then looking at this. So this is called a reflected ceiling plan, RCP. It's called reflected because technically if you're looking up, an image would be mirrored. Like if you look up at a ceiling, your floor plan would be backwards. We call it reflected because we would mirror it back on itself. A bit of a technical thing, but I'm staring at this. I'm thinking about, how am I going to model this? Do I need to model this? Is it relevant to have all the sprinklers, all the pot lights, have the light ballasts? And the answer is no. I don't need any of that. Like, I am going to show a new ceiling anyway. If anything, I just need the ceiling tile. So anyway, I'm firing up SketchUp. And then I realized, I got to sign in. I haven't opened up SketchUp in so long that I have to log into the software. And there's a phone home thing with the licensing. So that's just firing up. And here we go. So yes, this is SketchUp on its own. It always has a little man, a little human scale. I'm just prepping to import a first pass of what I've drawn. Okay, so let's import in the drawings that we've created here. They're coming in. There's all the info on it. Here we go. So, there's some crap in there. So, this is where we would start over. We'd go back to the drawing, delete out extraneous things that are on the side of the drawing. Here we go. Also don't need the ceiling plan. Save. And then just might as well do, I think I do an audit. A purge. That's purging all the things nested in the drawing, and audit. That's just auditing the file for any kind of discrepancies. A purge. So when you make a block and you delete it in AutoCAD, it stays in the file. It's just kind of in the hidden background stuff. To do a purge is removing all that extraneous stuff that's loaded into the drawing. Just makes it a super clean file. And here we go. And then I see, this curve. How are we going to do that? That's going to be tricky. So I think that's right. Well, I do this, but then I think later on, I'm like, you know what? It'd be easier to make this a block. So yeah, that's right. So editing curves is tricky in SketchUp. The software doesn't handle it that well. So instead, I'm creating a block that is its own entity, so that when we bring it into SketchUp, I can edit it on it as a standalone thing, as its own kind of entity. You'll never be the wiser in the actual model, but from a efficiency standpoint, it just makes it really easy to pick this one element, change it, independent of the actual walls and the floors and things like that. So here I am, I'm making this kind of polyline, this funky kind of block, so that, in the 3D modeling software, it'll just be that much easier to manage. There we go. And now I'm just going to make it a polyline. And then that way, it's this one thing. I bet I make it a block, if I remember correctly, when I was working on this. There, it's all joined. Yes, I do make it a block. Curved. Yeah, there we go. Nice. Save, and then re-import. So do it all over again kind of thing. Go back to SketchUp. There we go. I just delete this guy. Ooh. Something's funny. There we go. And import. Yeah, so here it goes. Yep. That came in just fine. Nice and clean. Look at that. Only one thing. And oddly enough, the selection is so big, I think there's a weird extraneous entity still in this model. Yeah, and you just saw the as-built measurements by hand that was on site. Here we go. Anyway, we are extruding up walls. So this is the fun part. This is where we've gone now from 2D into 3D. I checked the as-built measurements, trying to figure out what is the height. And I believe it was something like 8'11" and 3/4 or something like that. For sake of this model, we just make it 9 feet. Make it easy. There's no point. No one's going to measure the model. And it's so close by like a fraction of an inch. It's fine. So when you import from CAD, the CAD file is its own component. So you have to double click into the component to edit it. When you escape out of it, you are outside of that component. So the stickiness gets managed by components or by groups. You have to make sure that you group things or make things components so that entities don't combine together. I can do a separate video showing what that looks like. Right now, I'm just kind of working away on this thing so that, I have a task at hand. I can do a closer tutorial at another date. But you'll see, so I've made a floor that's separate from the walls. That way, making the floor material is its own thing. I really dislike it when people make the floor attached to the walls, because almost always a floor is made out of something different than walls. You want to be able to control that stuff. I'm now modeling the casing. Little copy paste action and then a little rotation. Sometimes SketchUp can give you a little hard time in picking the right axis. I'm trying to get, I think, the red axis. Yeah, the red axis. Here I do it away from the center, and then I'll just move it into place. Just like that. Easy. And then to make this a surface that can be pushed and pulled, you just add a line, and then if it's modeled tightly, then it creates a solid that you can push and pull. Here we go. So making the side casing, extruding that up, and if you remember, this is a component that's been mirrored, so both sides are happening simultaneously. I'm building one casing and it's doing both sides. And then I remember, I stretched this top sill all the way across. I only have to make it to the middle because it's mirrored. So I come back to try to find midpoint. It's hard because I've separated everything. But yeah, you can select in, and then I think I just bring it over. Yeah, I got it. It's red. Sometimes AutoCAD has a layer color that comes into SketchUp. This particular layer color is red, hence why this is coming out red. I eventually make it white and then eventually get it colored for whatever design that comes out of this. And now to pull up the door. So as you see, I'm editing only one component. And as I pull it up, it's actually doing both doors at the same time because they are technically the same copied component. And that's what makes it super efficient. I think I don't like what I did here because, yes, so I snapped to the ceiling of that sill that's made it its own entity. So now I'm going to input to be just shy by like a fraction of an inch. And that way I can select the door versus the casing independently of one another. Making it white now, just so that the red doesn't kind of skew my perception. There's a bit of a base here. So the glass is actually sitting on a 6-inch curb. And I could model the glass now, but you know what? If I move the glass up the 6 inches, it'll move all the glass up 6 inches, all the components that I've copied over. So that's the way to do that. I'm double checking in the photos of what that curb looks like, seeing if I've got a dimension of some kind. And I don't think I do. I think I just go by eye on what I see in the photos on another screen. And as I'm working through it, you know, I'm listening to my music. Let's see if I get it here. Staring at it, getting a sense. Yeah, so 6 inches, pretty darn close based on the photos. There we go, pulling it across. Now, this glass work. Oh, do I bring it up individually? Oh, maybe I did. That's not super efficient. So that's one way to do it, is to literally select them all. But now that glass and the glass on the other side of the hallway are at different heights, and they're the same component. So that was a bit of a no-no on my part. But, you know, when you're in the middle of doing these things, no one's perfect. And something to think of for next time. So here I go. I'm making this a pane, and making this a glass pane, and then stretching it up. You see all of them stretch up all at once. So I've basically modeled 8 panes of glass in one fell swoop. And then I realized, I should have brought the original one up 6 inches, but that's okay. That's hardly inefficiency there. Took less than a second to fix. Go 6 inches down, coming across, and then doing the curb. 6 inches up, and then pulling across. There we go, piece of cake. There we go, we kind of have a nice shell happening now. This is the conference room proper. Time to model this desk. So, I mean, the existing desk has these large round legs, not that big. Let's try it again. I think they're around 2 feet in diameter, or 1 foot radius. And desks are usually about 32 inches up, and so I just manually punch it in. You know, I think I punch in something like 28 inches, and then expect for a 4-inch top on top of that. And you like, as you work through architecture, you remember these dimensions. You know, desks are a certain height, counters are a certain height. They're very common things that, with practice, you just remember. You might be wondering if you are in Europe or in parts of Canada. I'm speaking in Imperial, which is it's this weird thing where, because a lot of materials are come in from the US, we have to speak in Imperial terms because that's where the materials are coming from. I was taught in metric. However, in architecture school, I jumped a bit in Imperial and metric, and then my first architecture job was all in Imperial. And so that's what I've I've grown to be accustomed to is imperial measurements, and there is a there is a rationale to using imperial. Imperial is related to actual human dimensions. A foot is roughly the size of a human foot. People are a unit of that proportion of a foot. 6 foot tall, 5 foot tall, whatever it is. An inch is about a thumb width. There are things that make it kind of universal for spaces. This particular space is 9 feet tall. That's very easy to kind of discuss. Comparatively to metric, this is like 2,100 millimeters or something like that, which to me is kind of gibberish. But I have a hard time imagining 2.1 meters, but I don't have a hard time imagining 9 feet. So it all depends on people. Usually if people talk in metric, I have to convert in my head into imperial to picture that dimension. But yeah. Here we see I'm inputting desk chairs, task chairs for this conference room, and I've chosen the Herman Miller Cosm series. They have this beautiful red version of this chair, and I feel like it'll bode well with the branding of this company. This as I mentioned earlier in the video, the company has a lot of red, white, and gray tones in their graphics, in their company branding. And so why not pull that into some of the furniture, some of the design of this conference space. And it's a beautiful red. The computer doesn't render it exactly as I would like it to, but it's pretty close. Look it up, Cosm by Herman Miller. They're beautiful little task chairs. So what I'm doing is I'm selecting the existing material there and just altering that. That's not the perfect way to do it but in terms of the speed at which I'm trying to do this, it's a quick way to edit materials. Why it's not a good way is because this particular material has already been labeled a certain way for a certain color, and so by altering the color of that thing, the label of it is now mismatched with the color. No one's ever going to see this in terms of the client side, in terms of the how this thing is labeled, or that's not as relevant. It's just it's not as clean of a way to model. Here we go. So I'm going to now extrude up this curved wrap portion. And that will get smoothed out, those little tessellations, facets. But yeah, I mean, this is coming together. So largely, I know that the chairs are going to be red. Right now, I'm still working on the overall mass, and I wonder if it's now that I start putting in some color. No, I start putting in the TV. I'm filling in the space with the things that I know need to exist in here. The television is what they've actually selected is it's a smart television by, I think, ViewSonic makes it, where it's like a whiteboard, but it's a TV, and it's built with all sorts of smart technology, so you can stream in other people. It's like in this day and age of a post-COVID or post-pandemic kind of world, this is really huge for business moving into the future. Is how do we communicate in conferences, in conference rooms, without actually physically being there? I'm taking out some logo stuff. I'm taking out some little things in this component. So this was taken from SketchUp has its own, they call it a warehouse, their own component warehouse. And it's a bunch of things that people have made, and they've posted it onto this online repository, which is great. Some things are not modeled. Not all things are modeled equally. Some things are modeled better than others. Later, you will see that I install a rendering software called Podium. We no longer really use the rendering software for rendering, but they have a really good library of things on top of what you can render. So for a moment, I'm actually gonna, because I haven't set this up on SketchUp, I've actually had to repurchase the license to install onto the software to get access to all those components, all those library items. Oh, I noticed a little bit of red sticking out here, and there's no surface. So you're seeing straight through into this item, and so it's missing. Sometimes you have to add a line, and it will close up this thing. And so there it is. It's missing one line to close up the walls of this component, this entity. Make it white. There we go. Perfect. Yeah, so now onto the kitchenette. So the kitchenettes, so cabinetry always typically floats off the ground about 4 inches because there's a kick. There's a toe kick. The purpose of that is when you're standing next to something, your toes actually stick forwards a few inches. So there's always this kick below that's meant to take abuse from shoes that kick it, but also to be a bit of relief that when you're so close to something, your toes you don't stub your toes on something. On top of that, there's a countertop to a cabinet system. So when you model these things, it's not just one box. For just even this, it's 3 boxes. Later on, you'll see I even divide it into drawers, into a cabinet fronts. So it's a bunch of boxes that need to come together to make it have some semblance of realism. If you model your kitchenette to just be a single volume, it just doesn't look right. And the minimum to make it read as believable is to do it in 3 boxes, 3 volumes. Here I'm trying to put in the upper cabinets, and upper cabinets are typically 15 inches deep. Sometimes they are 12 inches deep. Those are really shallow ones. 12 inches is pretty shallow. You can barely fit plates in that, but it technically is fine. This one, I think I made it, 15 inches. That looks like 15 inches. And then I go back to see what 12 inches looks like. No, it should be 15 inches. Let's leave it that way, kind of thing. I just double check the measurement for my own sanity. That's kind of a base kitchenette there, and then I will break that down into drawers. Now I'm staring at the minor wall, the minor feature wall, and it's like, what is this that I've drawn? Is it a credenza? Is it like a furniture item? Is it just a shelf? Is it a base cabinet? And I think what I end up doing is, okay, this will make as base cabinets with the countertop on top. Let's give that a shot. And so what I did just there is I copied the line, I cut the lines out, and I'm creating its own component and pulling upwards from there. So I've made a component, I've raised it up, and I'm like, okay, this is the countertop now. This is now whatever we do, we'll try to figure out, and maybe a logo will fit somewhere here. For privacy's sake, I'm not showing the logo in this model. The final renderings that I do that were sent to the clients, of course, have the logo in it. But for now, we just put a placeholder just for anonymity of the clients. And it's like, this seems a bit chintzy. Something needs to be supporting this. Rather than float this out and have no function underneath, let's just make it cabinetry. Let's just make it storage that's usable. They can also put a lot of their electronics in here. There is going to be controls for the television. There's going to be there's speakers that go onto the ceiling. So we might as well include all that. Now I'm doing the toe kick, which is in about 2 inches or so you can offset in SketchUp. Here I go, 2 inches. And then I take the back line and I just pull it back. It's kind of hard to see here, but I'm taking the rear line in that this line work, pulling it back so that the volume comes down all the way. There we go. Now, what I've done is it's very hard, and SketchUp is hard to shrink something that has curves on it. So rather than do anything from that vantage, I ultimately make the countertop on top of that curved surface forwards. I make it slightly larger, and that just because countertops typically overhang cabinetry below, and so you'll see that a little later on. There's a portion here where I've cut out. This is podium. That was that little toolbar that I brought over as podium, and I cut out a portion of this video where I had to repurchase the license and do those things. But clicking in, you'll see the Podium browser, and this has all the content. I don't remember it being this glitchy and slow originally working on this software, but it got really chunky. So I'm surprised. I'm trying to figure out. Oh, right. I'm just getting reacquainted with Podium here. It's been a while. Clicking through the buttons, like, what do these things do again, kind of thing. One button you won't see me use for Podium is the render button. That's that first one with that sphere with the, that one. I'm not going to click that one. So I'm just going through and it's like populating the model with things that will be required for making this feel real. So Podium is great. It's got materials. So the clients want carpet tile down here. It's got various different components that are like coffee machine or microwave or the knickknacks that make a space, that fill up a space, that are required in a space. And so, I'm also taking a look here. Oh, there's the license, and I'm putting in the license information from the website. Yeah, so I got to work, and here are the components. As you can see, so I like choosing glass. It used to be a glass railing would pop up first in Podium, and I would use that glass as my base kind of glass pane material. I think I choose like a shelf or something that's got a glass material in it. And so that there's a lot of that when you're doing this stuff. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. If you can find something that's been built that has the right properties built into it, like glass, like reflectivity, refractivity, transparency, then you don't need to reinvent what that material will look like. You just take it from another pre-built thing. That's the way I like to do it. And the trick for me for glass is when you look at a pane of glass, the edges of it are always dark. Like when you look at a pane of glass straight on, it's clear, but the edges are dark. And so what I do is I put a dark tint around the four edges of a glass pane. And one, it helps to define itself in 3D. When you're rendering in 3D, you don't actually see, you don't exactly see line work. But in real life, those lines kind of show up. You see edges of things because there's kind of a shadow line that shows up. And so I add in a little bit of darkness to that edge of the glass. It helps define that edge. And it does bring a level of reality to what that glass pane is, because just the way it renders out, it comes out far more correct, put it that way. So the glass is in. Let's see, what do I do next? Looking at more components. I think the next thing was kind of the coffee maker. The clients for this project, they want good coffee. They want to host with good coffee. Oh, no, it's countertop. So Carrara marble, very a common kind of look. This would, of course, be out of a quartz, but a Carrara marble that looks... a quartz that looks like Carrara marble. When I say quartz, quartz is it's literally that stone quartz that's been chewed up and fabricated with a resin base to create slabs of this stuff. The porosity is much lower than most natural stones, including granite. natural marble itself is very porous. It's like a sponge. And you might notice like real Carrara marble kind of yellows, it patinas over time. Some people love that look. When it comes to these kind of commercial spaces, it gets pretty heavy commercial use. And so you want materials that are pretty hardy, that can handle quite a bit of use. Commercial grade, it's a weird thing that I didn't really grasp until maybe 5 or 6 years working in the industry, that commercial grade is a big step up from residential grade things. When we think of carpet or textiles or even countertop, things like that, flooring is a big one. If you imagine how many times in your home you walk to the bathroom, that might be 3 times a day. And if it's a household, let's say it's 4 people in your household, that's like 12 paths walking to the bathroom in a day. The wear and tear on that carpet or on that flooring is relatively low. 12 times 365 days, that's close to what, like 4,000 kind of wear and tear paths, put it that way. When you go into commercial, if you imagine an office that has, let's say, 100 people, and those people take, maybe 3, maybe 4 washroom breaks a day, let's say on average 3 washroom breaks a day, that's 300 people there and back, so that's like 600 times 365. Your magnitude is like, it's like hundreds of times more than a residential path. And so there is a big grade difference between commercial grade materials and residential grade materials. Don't expect to put in residential carpet into your office and expect it to look good after a year. Like, that's how quickly something can wear out based on just the hardiness of how that thing was fabricated. That was lost on me until a few years working. And then I was like, oh, there is a big difference, and namely like textiles. They call it double rubs. Like upholstery textiles have been tested in terms of friction on a fabric, and that's it. The grade difference is so high, you just can't substitute a fabric that wasn't meant for taking this kind of wear and tear and just utilizing it in a commercial scenario. Really important to grasp that when it comes to materials in architecture. Here we go. So you saw me. I had added material to the tabletop. Now I'm starting to divide up the cabinetry and of course I'm not being too picky about it. I'm just making sure that there's some realism to what this base cabinet can look like. Just because if there's no cabinet fronts, then it's just a block. And then in the name of efficiency, what I'm doing here is I'm going to make this one component and copy it across. And you want to copy it across with the gaps, 1/8-inch gap. And here I go. So you can see the little thin gap between the panels, and that does read in the rendering. When you see the rendering, you do read those little things make it all the difference from reality, to make it feel like it's reality. And then, didn't make that component. That's bad form. What I do here is I take a look, what's the height here, and then I find a rational kind of division. And then I think I've realized that the base cabinet height works out great to be the upper cabinets. You could make this one big door, but splitting up upper cabinets into upper and lower of an upper cabinet, it just makes it a little bit easier for people that aren't 6'6" in height, which is a lot of us. I'm short, so I like providing a lower upper cabinet, so that's just things that are just easier to reach at the lower datum of a upper cabinet system. And then the high uppers then can be for things that are just you don't use every day. It's like deep storage kind of stuff. Now, as you see here, I'm copying the base cabinet fronts. This way, when you make, again, if you make a change, boom, it makes the change right across to all of them. Now, here's a shorthand. Rather than shortening this, because if I shorten it, it will change all of them, you can scale. And so this is a scaled component. It can get tricksy if you map a material image onto it. But for color, for that kind of thing, this is a perfectly great way to use the same component that are at different heights multiple times. And now, in theory, if I make an update to one cabinet, the entire kitchen updates, which is such a shorthand method to modeling. Ultimately, I think we go with a two-toned kitchen system, so the base cabinets are a different color than the upper cabinets. And in SketchUp, there's a very quick way you can make certain components unique so that they're discrete from other components. That's a very quick click of the button. So it is in your interest to try to duplicate components as much as you can, being cognizant of how you're going to be using that later. And if you need to make something unique, no problem. Now, putting in an espresso maker. So this is where it got janky. So I put in espresso, but I was in the carpet materials. There's no espresso in the carpet, unless there was an espresso color. The search was kind of janky. But then I found this browser particularly slower than what I remember of it a few years back. I'm not exactly sure what had changed, but it was certainly slower than what I've become accustomed to in the design workflow. Here it is. Even that was kind of a long wait for this to populate, and it shouldn't take that long. Trying to find an espresso maker. Now, they have a big Keurig machine in their current office, so this happens too. Is you bring up a browser of items, and you don't really find exactly what you need. And in this case, I find a placeholder, but I don't love it because it's a little too small. Like, the coffee machine for this office, this conference room, it's not of the right scale. So you'll see what I plop in. It's the closest I can find in this system. I ultimately replace it. You'll see it later on in the video. And so it takes a little while. So you click it, it needs to download and populate into the system. And yeah, like this coffee machine, of course, if this was my home, totally fine. But it's too small. So I delete it, try to find something new. It's tricky, finding exactly the right product. It's a little bit of an Easter egg hunt. That's the first one there, the Breville. That's a super automatic. I don't really want to show that. I mean, they are fine machines, but personally, I like the espresso machines that do individual functions rather than have one machine do all functions, like a super automatic. This one is based on a Jura system, Jura, which I think is owned by Fema. It's also a super automatic. It's not right. It's not what I actually want to use, but it's a placeholder. So I think I'd leave it in there. I'm like, okay, I've spent enough time looking, and it'll do for now. Just to get a sense of scale of stuff, but it's not the right machine I'm thinking for this client. So I'm going through, and so it needs a sink. You need some kind of sink. It currently has a sink, and I am thinking of a more rectangular, smaller sink. It doesn't need to be a full kitchen sink in this space. And plopping that into the countertop. Now it's a bit of a search, so I'm rifling through a whole bunch on another screen of all the different faucets and sinks. There's so many to choose from. And finding one that you're already envisioning, it can be tricky. So here, I think I've picked something, and I'm just kind of waiting for it to load. And And as it's coming in, oh, maybe not. Maybe I'm moving on to something else. Right. So I'm now playing with some paint color. And, maybe this wall is red. And maybe the wall wraps all the way across. That's this red kind of element in the space. I thought that was kind of striking. It can be a little jarring over time. I think time will make this will kind of date the look, but in essence there is a branding thing there. So I thought, let's give it a shot. Let's try to do this kind of big red wall version. You notice my paint color ends on an inside corner. I learned that trick from a previous employer, a previous architect I used to work under. You don't really want paint to end on an open corner. Then it just looks like paint applied to a surface. When it ends on an inside corner, then it has a nice logical place to end, and the surface feels like a field. If you don't really understand what that means, let me know in the comments. I can show what that means in terms of inside corner versus outside corner. But I've ended the color on an inside corner, and that just it's much easier to paint. Like, it's really hard to paint a nice clean line on an outside corner. Inside corners have a natural edge, so that the paint job can be done well. And here we go. So we're now making the ceiling. Quick way to make a ceiling: you copy the floor up and then make it unique. Here we go. Make unique there. So now it's its own component, discrete from the floor itself. And that was quick, 2 buttons. And now this ceiling is its own thing. And when I drop a person in there, there we go. That's human view. And then I can turn on the ceiling. I get a sense of, what this space feels like with the top on it. As you notice, I put that little human scale. It's setting a camera in at I think the camera's at like 5'6" or so. That's a little tall for interior shots, in my opinion. And I like to lower the camera a little bit, just you get a little more drama in the image. What you might have noticed as well is I quickly changed the field of view to I think something like 24 millimeters in that range. If you're an aspiring architect, I recommend you also spend some time in photography, in learning about those technical things in photography. I understand things in terms of a field of view, in terms of lens length. So like 50 millimeters versus 24 millimeters versus those things I understand from taking photos with a 35 millimeter camera. That's film camera. And that the modern SLRs, single lens reflex cameras, still talk in those terms, still refer to those dimensions for a telephoto image versus a wide angle image versus a prime kind of a portraiture lens length. Interior shots tend to need to be a little more wide angle. And from experience, I have lenses that are like 18 millimeters. That's like super wide angle. You can see quite a lot. But the distortion you get in the image, the things that are at the edge are skewed so far, and it makes the smallest spaces just look gigantic. So it is not in your interest to show that, because in the end, the space won't feel that big. The worst thing is you show a rendering that looks so massive, and then it gets built, and then the client goes, "Oh, this is way smaller than I expected." So the most I try to tweak a lens length, the focal length in this in the interior shot is about 24 millimeters. I think this is about between 24 to 30 millimeters in focal length. Some people are good with degrees, so there is an angle of view that some people understand. I don't think in those terms. I think in focal length, in millimeters. And that's just because I understand that on a 35 millimeter camera, a prime lens, something that looks like your human eye, is about 50 to 55 millimeters. But you don't see a lot. Like it's a pretty tight kind of frame. as you go into the interior, you go all the way down to like, let's say 10 millimeters. That's like a fisheye. You can just see almost the entire, you see the whole world in this panoramic view almost. I can understand that. I can picture that all in my head. I think it's really important if you are a aspiring architect to understand some form of lens length or focal length, because it makes such a big difference when you're choosing views of a space you're designing. It makes all the difference. Here I am. I'm kind of setting up some scenes, so that's like pre-selected camera angles. And as you can see, I set up something I like, and then in SketchUp, you go to camera and you go 2-point perspective. What that does is it makes the vertical lines actually perpendicular, parallel. You notice all the vertical lines here are all parallel, and what that all that is the camera is positioned at 90 degrees from the floor, or is there. It's not tilted upwards or downwards. Right now, the camera's tilted upwards, and you can kind of see the lines, the vertical lines converge. They're all on angle. If my camera is bang on, perpendicular to the floor, let's say, or parallel to the walls, those vertical lines become parallel. They don't converge in any way. It's a 2-point perspective. I can do a little tutorial about 2-point perspectives as well if you're interested in that. But by eye, it's not a big deal. It's just once you export these images and you don't have 2-point perspective on, the images just look a little wonky. There's something about it that just looks a little haphazard, and it just doesn't read very well. So now I'm doing the sink. So I don't like vessel sinks, so I'm like, that doesn't work for me. I'm just getting a sense of scale, and then I'm going to choose a better sink from the list. Ooh, that's a chunky one. Nope, that won't do. Let's see what comes next. Hopefully I pick something a little nicer. There we go, that's a typical sink. Well, so I put this in. This one is not the one I end up going with. If you could see what I'm not realizing here as I'm working on it is the rear of the countertop. There's not a lot of space to place a faucet. There's not enough space. So I go to the depths of basically routering out the surround of this sink, taking a look at what the edge condition looks like, but that's not what I need. To do this, the easy way to do this is to select the countertop and the sink and to intersect them. So what that does is intersect faces with selection, and all of a sudden now a set of lines of where the two models have met get made. And then I go into the countertop, I paste those lines in, I can drop down. Now, of course, there's also another volume below. There's the cabinet box that we've made below. So don't forget, you also have to hollow out this portion down here. And I'm like, oh, how do I do this? Something's not right. I'm like, the front of the sink is so far forwards, it's actually in front of the cabinet front. Something is weird here. Let's just keep hollowing this out anyway, just for trying this out. I'm like thinking about how should I do this? Okay, you know what? I'm just going to draw a rectangle. I'm going to go pull downwards. That's the bottom of the sink. I'm going to go down a little further. There we go. And then maybe if I pull this wall out, there's the edge of the sink. Right, this is the volume of the base cabinet that you're looking at. Pull that out. At some point, at one moment, you might notice it. I'm like, oh, where am I going to put the faucet? There's not enough countertop space for the faucet. So then I go, no, this is not the right faucet, not the right sink. We need to find a better sink, because that condition doesn't make any sense there. And so I'm staring at it, I'm thinking, this isn't right. There's not enough space for a faucet. Let's try it again. I'm checking the counter. Is this right? Something's weird. This sink is weird. Something is not working right. So I'm staring at it. In my head, I'm going through a bunch of things, and then I'm like, you know what? Let's just choose a proper small kitchenette sink. There, perfect. Look at the size of this thing, perfect. So I'm like, okay. Let's undo everything we've done. Undo. Control Z that business. There we go. There, nice little sink, and then it could be just above a base cabinet, a single base cabinet. Perfect, and there's enough space for the faucet. This is what we're talking about. So select that, select this, paste in place. Now we can hollow out the countertop. On top of that, we can hollow out the base portion. And here I'm just transferring lines down so that we can push this down. Look at that. Beautiful sink. Nice undermount sink. Undermount means that the sink is literally glued to the underside of the countertop. My family home, back when I grew up, we had a top mount sink that's, you get this kind of metal lip above the countertop. It's just cheaper to do it that way. The look is so much nicer when it's undermount because it's so clean. It's like a clean counter, a nice polished edge, and then the sink is below it. Placing in a nice simple faucet. And here I am getting a little sidetracked, probably reading an email. And let's see if I snap out of it. Nope. Well, let's see. Okay, back at it. So, starting up Enscape. Oh, 2 seats. So this comes up. So my office, we pay for 2 seats of a rendering package. This is it's called Enscape. And at any given time, any 2 of my staff can use the 2 seats. Because we found on average, 2 people are only using it at a time. Why need to pay for more licenses? I had to just kick someone off at that point. So I've asked someone else to jump off of it for a moment while I throw this into rendering software. Here we go. So, I mean, this is the first pass. Like, this is what the rendering software does. It calculates what light is doing. And Enscape is a really good tool because it does it real time. Back in the day when I was a student, these things were, it would be overnight. We'd be waiting for the computer to render out what light does. And it would take 8 hours to get one image. Now with the graphics technology, with the computer technology, it renders out live. Like this is the kind of resolution you would get back in the day when you would wait all night and then it might come out funny. Now it's such a great tool. We can see closer to what reality will look like in this space, and this is the weird dichotomy of architecture, is we're always trying to approach that realistic look, but until something gets built, that's when it becomes a reality. That's when it becomes something that is an actual thing in this world. How do you pre-build, like, there's beyond this, I mean, you can't really pre-build a building to see what it feels like before you build the actual building. You just be building it twice. The tricky thing for architecture is we have to create these scale models or renderings or things to inform us of what this thing might be at a smaller scale that we can digest, because we simply just can't build a one-to-one replica of, let's say, someone's home in advance. Now I'm thinking of the ceiling. So once I saw the rendering, I'm like, nice flat ceiling, that's not what we're going to have. We're going to have we're going to have a drop ceiling, ACT. That's acoustic ceiling tile. It's a cheap product. It's basically 2x4 panels that are suspended on a T-track system. It's called a T because it looks like a T. And I'm just looking at this. I'm like, these are the old lights, the existing lights. We don't need to see that. I'm just kind of thinking through, what do I need here? what do I need here? Ultimately, you know what? I need to import this drawing into SketchUp so that I have a basis for something. But I don't need to actually model all those little things because we're building in a new ceiling. I'm double checking the integrity of the model, seeing am I a rational number away from the original floor plan. And so I take this and I think I drop it into the prep file, into the file, this simpler prep file. Now I'm rusty. Usually the copy and paste happens in one shot. I screwed something up here with a base point. I do it again. Here we go. Copy from 0, 0. Paste from 0, 0. Boom. So it's at the right spot. Now when I import this into CAD, when I import this into CAD, it will land where I want it to land so I can manipulate it in the right way. There we go. So there it is. And I don't need to build this whole thing. All I need to build technically is one ceiling tile and copy it a bunch of times. And as I model it, I think to myself, you know what, this would be way better as a square grid acoustic ceiling tile. The 2x4, the 2 foot by 4 foot tile, it's just a little too commercial. If we go more of a square grid, it might just look a little bit better. And so here I go. I kind of start building the first tile, bring it up, and then I offset, I think it's a 1/2 inch on each side so that I've pre-made the gaps between each panel. So here I go, in, a little 1/2 inch, a little 1/2 inch. There we go, a little 1/2 inch there. And the last edge, 1/2 inch. And so when I copy it across, it'll have the gaps pre-done, which is like just an efficient way of doing things. But as I stare at this, I'm like, I don't like the elongated tile. Like I would rather a square tile. So I think I edit it about now. Yeah, there we go. I go, you know what? Let's move that in 2 feet. There we go. Now, repetition. That's key. So I go from here, bring it down 2 feet. Oh, sorry. Down, and then another little 1/2 inch or 1 inch, whatever it is. So I've now made 6. They're all identical. They are all actually the same component. I do a little bit of math. This goes across, I think, 6 feet. And then do it again, but this time 12 feet. You know, you just punch it in as math goes. 2 feet. This side I bring back, 2 feet. And then now we got to copy up and down. So I think we're going downwards. Oh, there's another thing. So because you transfer between AutoCAD and SketchUp, the hotkeys are different. So there I was trying to copy and I kept pushing C, but that's not how it works in SketchUp. It's the move command and you hit Control, and that will make a duplicate. So for a moment there, you saw a bunch of circles kind of show up, and that's what that was. There we go. That grid is coming along, and see how quickly you make an entire ceiling with basically one tile. And now I just move that down 50 feet. That was the dimension that I had determined back in Autodesk, in AutoCAD. Bring it down 50 feet. Oh, I make it a group. That's another thing too. You've compiled it so that's one thing. And then you raise it up 9 feet. There we go. Let's see what that looks like. Go hide. All right. That looks about right. I think I lower it so that it's the level of the top of the wall. That's pretty close. Let's bring it up just a touch. There we go. Perfect. That's what that looks like. That is what that tile ceiling will ultimately look like. But then staring at it, I think once I brought it back into Enscape, it's missing something. This ceiling needs something. And what was talked about to the clients originally was this kind of drop ceiling cloud. Maybe it's pill shaped to kind of mimic the desk, but the ceiling needs something. The grid is okay. This ceiling grid is okay, but there should be something, and it'll help unify the ceiling and the furniture together. So I'm thinking about here, and then I developed this kind of drop ceiling in the center of the space, which helps tie everything together. It also becomes a lit element as well. Yeah, so sometimes as the model gets larger and larger, it gets harder to kind of navigate. Not impossible, it's just harder. So for the ceiling, I figure why might as well use the table as the original base for this thing, and I can offset. If I offset this a couple feet, whatever it is, I can get a enlarged pill shape ceiling, drop ceiling item. So there we go. I've extracted it out, pasted it in place, and now offset this larger size. I'm kind of eyeballing something, and then I'll punch in a number. There's one side of it. I take it, reflect it on the other side, and Bob's your uncle. You've got two sides to this kind of cloud ceiling. They call it a cloud, but it's basically a dropped ceiling element. Flip along red, I think. Yeah. There we go. So I'm trying to make it equidistant from each other. There we go. So it's relatively centered on the table below. Connecting into the two sides. There we go. Go to the other side. Connecting in. There it all closes. Now I notice it's not exactly straight. There's a little bit of a chamfer there. In the end, I just leave it because no one will perceive it. It's meant to be more pill-shaped, but yeah, I think I do this twice if I remember correctly. Yeah, something about that, I'm like, oh, that doesn't look right. So then I do it again. And sometimes that happens, you know. You might have to redo things just to double check if it was done right the first time. And it's always worth the time to just, if you have any suspicion that something isn't right, do it again. It's totally worth your time to double check your model. And ultimately, it is the way it is. I didn't spend the time to flatten out that edge. It just leave it. The intention will be to have a perfect pill shape, but this is fine. Nice. And now we just raise that up 9 feet to the underside of ceiling. Perfect. Oh, that's nice. Of course, we're seeing it from the vantage that you'll never see it at. What matters is, from a view. Now, this doesn't look like much. However, it makes a big difference. In the rendering, it makes a big difference as kind of this cove-like condition. It helps break up this kind of harsh grid that's on the ceiling. It does a bunch of unifying things, and it becomes also a placeholder for some beautiful fixtures that we can place into the space. I look out for a light fixture that's hanging, some kind of a suspended light. I thought repetition of a few orbs would be nice, and you'll see them get dropped in just a moment. Yeah, and there it is. yeah, I mean, now trying to find the center of this pill shape cloud. And I think, maybe 4 or 5 of these orbs might be a nice kind of ceiling element in the space. And they're too low. Like, if these lights are too low, then no one can see the TV screen. It's defeated the purpose. So, yeah, I've had to raise that up so that viewing of the screen functions properly. And sometimes, rotating around the model, you just land your camera inside a wall like this. So I got frustrated with this, and you know what? We're working in components. The beauty of a component is if you've got the same component copied, you can work on that component and both components get updated. So what I've done is I've put that light into this pill-shaped cloud, copy it over, I think 50 feet, and let's work on this cloud, the clone of this cloud or the copy of this cloud down over here where I don't have constraints of walls. So that's a little trick, is to edit something that's outside of where it is, because it's duplicating itself in the space that the original component exists. I'm trying to find the center point of this pill-shaped entity. I can tell from the red line that's one axis, so it goes from that point and then down to this point, and this is where you'll see that SketchUp is kind of sticky. I made 2 lines, it became 1 line, but it's actually 2 separate lines. It's doing some weird things, and it took me a little second to figure out how do I make this 1 line again, and it's like, right, I have to delete a point. There's 1 point in there that separates the 2 lines, and again, a little bit of rust. I'd forgotten how to merge these 2 lines together, but I eventually get it. There we go. I select it, delete, and now there we go. 1 line. Now I can divide that line into multiple segments and what looks right by eye. And then now I move this thing across. It's very hard to find points on a line, and especially when a escutcheon like this is covering the line. How do you find those points? So I use a little bit of line work to help find these points of this divided line. There's a midpoint. There's one green endpoint. So I create this kind of line work. Move this out of the way. There we go. And then I copy that line work over, trying to find that center endpoint. Now it's tricky. It's like, where is this thing? There it is, And then I think I fail at this attempt because I can't click on the same point because it's underneath the plate. It's underneath that light plate. So I go this way instead. Here we go. And it finds it in this method for some reason. Don't ask me why SketchUp works the way it is. You get used to it and you remember how it functions or how it works. I think there's one more light that needs to get placed. But I go back to the scene just to take a look. Beautiful. I've edited this thing outside of the space, and it updates automatically inside the space. That's what I want it to do. Where's that 5th one? Perfect. There we go. So some beautiful drop light fixtures, illuminating the space. Now, these lights need to throw light. How do you do that? And in Enscape, the simplest way is to just make that material self-illuminate. You can make certain materials throw its own light. Back in the day, we would actually place a bulb or like a omni, what was it called? An omni light. It's a light that shines light in all directions. It's way easier to just make a material self-illuminate. That's like way simpler of a setting to choose. Let's see. There we go. Enscape. Nope, that's not right. I want the material editor. There we go. So now once you select, maybe I do it off screen. So I select the material, and then I can set. Oh, there it's back. Thank God. So I'm taking a look at this. Where is it? Where is it? And it's like, oh, no, it's the type of material. I go back up to the top where it says generic. What I actually want is self-illumination. And this has changed in the old version of Enscape. That self-illumination was its own bar, but now they have, I guess, further settings for it, or its own kind of subheading. Let's see what that looks like. Boom! Look at that. Lovely. It throws light. So that was so quick, back in the day. That, again, doing that would be another night of rendering. So what I'm doing here now is basically thinking about other surfaces that might self-illuminate. For instance, the under cabinet, the side of the cloud, that would be illuminated some way. I make it more cove-like at the end of the later portion of modeling, but for now I'm like, let's just make this thing illuminate from the sides as a start. See what that looks like. I can see it on the screen. It looks great. Here I am illuminating the underside of the upper cabinet. But yeah, right now I am making other things self-illuminate. I'm actually taking a look at what that rendering looks like on the other monitor right beside. Do I like what I see? Maybe. So right now I've actually got it set up where what I'm panning through, it's being copied in the rendering software on the window beside me. So I'm seeing it render live on another monitor. And right, and now the idea is extracting options from this, multiple options that we could potentially use. The last thing you want to show a client is a singular option. We want to show multiples. Empower our clients with choice. And if they don't like any of them, no problem. We're already accustomed to making different versions of a space. Here I am. I think I'm trying maybe a different carpet, a different color floor. Taking a look at what that might be. Playing with the current color of the carpet. And I'm seeing it live render on the other side, on the other monitor. Yeah, so from this point forwards, I speed up the video about 5 times. It's slow going. At this point, trying different things, trying different versions. It is this this is another 2 hours of work sped into a few minutes. So I'm trying different options. As you saw earlier, I did a save of this file. And I'm looking at it on the other screen. Well, what does this thing look like? And I'm exporting an image there, taking a little break, coming back, lunch. And so I've got my lunch in front of me, and now it's time to go render happy. So I'm doing all sorts of things on the side, trying to see what this looks like. And this next challenge is how do I make this wrap work? SketchUp is not great with trying to have a continuous image wrap around multiple surfaces. As you can see here, it's faceted, it's not working out right, and I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to figure out how do I map this thing, and it turns out you have to show it as a projected image across this field, across this surface. It was a bit of I almost bought the farm. I was frustrated and trying to get this to work. Again, another trick of the trade. Slide it over to another spot. It is a component. There it is. Slide it out of the space. You can work on it more freely outside of where the views are being taken. I figured it out. So I have this kind of projection of the image, and I project it onto the surface. I kind of get it to work there, but then as soon as I jump out, it doesn't work right. I have to reposition the image. Eventually I get this to work, so all is well. And then I realize I've pasted it across all the walls, so I have to make sure all the walls are back to white. There we go. Yeah, and there it is, some kind of pasted. This is not the image that I ultimately use. This is just a placeholder because it's nondescript. It doesn't have the company logo on it. And it gives you a sense of a graphic of some kind. Starting up Enscape again, we want to see what this looks like rendered. And look at that. There's this image that wraps around the wall. It does what it needs to do. I'm quite pleased with this. That works quite well. Maybe a splash of red. Maybe we have we highlight that kind of accent red based on the company's logo. And yeah, I mean, this is a pretty cool look so far. We were kind of targeting kind of a 50s mid-century kind of airport red white kind of thing, kind of a TWA look for this particular because there is a aspect of transport and goods and things like that. So we're trying to target that kind of look, but yeah. So I mean, it's a little retro, but at the same time trying to be modern about it as well. I'm noticing in the rendering that the edges of the glass are not nearly dark enough to be red. Yeah, it's hard to see. And yeah, taking a look at the joints, make sure that things read properly. And this is where we get the idea. Oh, this is where I expand out the countertop. Countertop needs to kind of overhang a little bit to be red in a rendering. And there I pull it out, and I think at this point I get the idea of a two-toned cabinet system. Yeah, a red base and a white upper. As you saw there, the front cabinets, the fronts, I just had to color one of them and they all updated. Super efficient. I'm debating here, do we make the doors red? It's a little much, so I think we leave it white. And now I'm setting up views for a video. So I'm creating set points for a video camera to be set, and I'm going around where each camera would be placed along a progression of a procession, a track. I realize at this point that I have to do it again because the views were not being saved. So here we go again. We're gonna rotate around the model, and that's part of the work, is doing it over again. And as I'm staring at it, the coffee machine is just not doing it for me, so I do edit the coffee machine near the end of this video. And round we go. So spinning around, and I think this time I get the set points to register as camera angles. Right, so I forgot about this. The light coming through the window. So surrounding this interior model is just daylight. That's how the renderer software works. And it's coming in a little too piercingly bright for the actual space. What that does is it makes the lights inside not enough for how much light comes in from the outdoors. And it affects the cameras. Oh, you got to snip it at the camera angle there. And as this thing comes around, you're seeing it pan around. Now I've made it completely opaque because at this point it would be completely dark because the light coming in through the windows would be so piercingly bright. So I mean, it's a bit of tweaking to get it right. I'm not crazy about this look right now. I think it's too flat. And so I go through a couple iterations of this to get the exposure right, to get this to look right. But yeah, I mean, the actual movement of the camera I like. Of course, this is sped up 5 times. Oh, there you see the track of the camera where I was creating those set points. This is much slower. The final one, of course, is 5 times as long, and slowing down the camera really helps to kind of ease the movement of it. Right now there's a lot of kind of up and down motion. By slowing it down, it really smooths out those that movement in the path. Now I'm trying different options. So I'm sliding in the black carpet seeing what that looks like. And on the side, I'm seeing what the CPU is doing. And running the render. Let's see how this looks. And as it's running right now, I'm off to the side, dealing with some other things, coming back, waiting for this thing to render out. It's running on the side. It's almost there, and so it takes some time. I mean, you can see the minutes kind of go by on the clock, and I just check some emails, waiting for this thing to finish. Opening up Excel. Here we go. So here's the kind of finalized video. And it's coming. I mean, this looks great. I mean, in terms of the design, it needs work, but in terms of setting up the model for further iterations, it's there. It certainly does the job. The glass work looks good. It's got a good reflection to it. The lighting is not bad. The textile on the chairs aren't right. It isn't slick like that. So I do spend a moment to fix that. I can't get it perfectly right. That's our job. We're not render artists. We just want it to hit a realm of some realism, but it doesn't have to be, like movie level visual effects. So on the side, I'm testing out different options for the textile on the chairs. I get it to a place where I'm like, that's not bad, but it's a far cry from perfect. But it gives a sense of what this thing looks like, and honestly, we can always pull samples from the fabricator, from the manufacturer, to show the client what this thing will actually look like. And I'm pleased. I'm pleased with the way it looks. I think the chairs are a big part of the selling feature of this. They're excellent chairs, and they pop in the space, being red. And they're high quality chairs. Herman Miller makes excellent office furniture. They do cost a pretty penny, but there's a saying that goes something like it's the last office chair you'll need to buy, and spending that money is totally worth it, because a $200 chair from, let's say, Staples or Grand & Toy just doesn't last nearly the longevity of these things. And on top of that, there's ergonomics too. They're ergonomically just better for you. If you're more comfortable sitting in your chair, in the long run for your own health, it's just a good thing. Here I'm tweaking, so I've created a new material for the under cabinet lighting. It's right now. I made it originally the same material as the lamps, as the hanging fixtures, but I want a little more control. I don't want it as bright as these decorative lights. So I've created its own material, and that way I can control it to be a lighter glow. It doesn't have to be so piercing. Again, that's our palette. Light, playing with color, light, materials. That's the tools what an architect uses in a space. I'm thinking of some kind of a simple white backsplash. This is kind of a faux dry stack stone. It's okay. We just need a little texture. It just can't be a flat wall back there. And I scaled it down so that maybe it's more of a tight tile, that kind of look. Gives it a nice little bit of gradient. Here's where I go to the the coffee maker. I'm just not happy with this super automatic that we have. So I go into the SketchUp warehouse, component warehouse, and try to find this kind of espresso machine that I'm imagining, and there it is. It's a little intense. Not this one. That's an engine. This one. It's a little intense, but God, that's an espresso machine. Now we're talking. A little tweaking happens as well. It's important to the grinder is not the right grinder now too. It's undersized in proportion to the coffee machine. And I find something larger. There we go. That's about the kind of grinder you need to match. In many ways, the grinder is almost more important than the coffee machine, but we can we can get to that on another day. So here I am updating I'm tweaking the red. I'm making it reflective. The materials that come in from the SketchUp warehouse are not tweaked in terms of reflectance. And so it's coming in matte, and these things are not matte. They're usually pretty glossy. So I'm just tweaking so that the render software properly shows what this thing looks like. Yeah, and we're getting to the end here. This is where I'm taking another look on the other screen, trying out different color palettes. Maybe this is white. I think I keep it red. I think I ultimately keep it red. It just feels right for the space. But I'm trying, and that's part of it is the beauty of being able to render this stuff is so that you could try alternatives really quickly. And that's the whole point. And so you're seeing this in SketchUp. I'm staring at it on being rendered out on the other screen, just to assess, how does this look? Does this make sense? Viewing it on SketchUp like this, it's just not enough. Like at one point, this was the height of technology for this kind of visualization. Now that we have render packages that and technology that can handle this kind of computing, it is really important to look at this thing in its rendered format on the side. And so that's what I'm doing here. I'm staring at this and seeing, oh, there's a view here looking from the corridor in, exporting an image, seeing what that looks like, and then setting up a scene. And so that's the view, you got a quick glance at it real fast. What does that look like with the wrap? From the outside, they will see this kind of backdrop from the corridor, guests or people. So I'm setting up my scenes. Now there's 4 views. There's the big red wall, as you saw at the earlier part of the modeling. And now just updating this cove light. It isn't going to self-illuminate from the sides. It's actually going to be a proper cove. And so that's what I'm doing here is I'm extending it out to be what reality would make this thing actually look like. Up. You can do it. There we go. Bringing those things down. There we go. It's just not knowing to do it. There we go. Perfect. And then seeing what that looks like in the 3D model. Seeing that cove, all of a sudden there's an aspect of reality. Okay, there's this illumination happening above, and that makes a lot of sense. And so I think I bring the image over. You get one final view. There we go. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate you guys following along. This was a long video, I will admit, but I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm pleased with where this is at right now. What I've ultimately submitted to the client is far more developed. This is actually more of a first pass 3D schematic design. But yeah, you get a sense of from start to finish what the workflow is like on our end. Of course, there's an aspect of laying this stuff out on paper, on sheets, and there's all that stuff as part of our job. But yeah, thank you for tuning in, and see you on the next one. Cheers. That was a long one. That was a long video. Thank you so much for watching it. And yeah, if you enjoyed it, please let me know in the comments. If not, you don't have to say anything. It's all good. It's all good.